Welcome to Party Animal Quilting.
In this episode, I make the final decisions of how to quilt this test quilt. This is a smaller quilt that I'm doing before I finish the larger quilt to make sure I know how the applique is going to look and how all the machine quilting is going to look. The last thing I have to do is the quilting around the square in the block. I have some background quilting to do around the feathers, and I have some decisions to make about that. Now, a party's not a party without three things: shoes, a new pair of shoes my husband bought me for Christmas, beverage, I have Diet Dr. Pepper in my cup, and snacks. Tonight I'm enjoying some Christmas M&Ms.
Let's party.
Figuring out how to finish the background stitching around the feathers in my block, I'm going to actually look to the border. In the border, I did background quilting that was simple switchback lines in navy blue thread, and I think I'm going to mimic those here as well. Whenever I turned the corners, I drew a diagonal line to make a false miter, so I'll be doing that again. And when I'm out at the border, out at the binding area here, I am going to stitch off the edge of the quilt so that I don't have a switchback on both sides. That is going to make it so that it is like a elongated letter C here in the outer edge. What it's going to do is it's going to let me trim this quilt and square it without worrying about where those curves are. That's actually the same way I handled the outer edge of the border of this quilt. So I'm going to mimic the border quilting inside of this block. I've threaded my needle with 50 weight confetti cotton thread. My bobbin is threaded with an 80 weight Deco Bob polyester. I use a thicker thread in the needle so that it's a little more visible, a little more durable as it goes through the needle, and in the bobbin a thinner thread so the bobbin will last longer. I've marked the diagonals of my quilt so that I can miter those corners when I come to them, and I am going to start quilting here. I'm going to start quilting in a middle. Pull up the bobbin thread. I'm going to take a couple small stitches. And I'm going to stitch left and right with curls on either end. Ooh, let me slow that down a little bit. So I'm slowing the machine down, so I will still put my foot pedal all the way to the ground. And I'm stitching each of these switchbacks about the width of my foot, so it's about a 1/4 inch apart. And I've turned the corner on that diagonal miter. close to joining, I'm going to be pretty careful to make my spacing work out. I'm going to kind of force it. There we go. So I closed that, and I'm going to do a little trick here and just stitch to the other side of the line to have one less knot, and continue to do switchbacks on the other side of this line. I actually really like the way the inside of that frames it, and I'm going to do the same look on the outer edge of this block. But first I'm going to stitch down this outside edge so I can quilt off and on it. I'm trying to determine how I could possibly be happier with how this quilt came out, and I can't. I'm so glad that I did the test of choosing the weights of the thread, the patterns of the thread, how I was going to stitch everything. So this quilt is finished, ready for me to bind, and that means it's ready for me to get appliquing the large scale quilt that this is based on. So I have, I don't know, 6 months of work ahead of me before I get to quilt it again, but at least I know what I'll do. To thank you for following along with me on this quilting adventure, I am going to choose one item that I used in this quilt and put it on sale for you. From now through January 28th, 2021, save 20% on each 2,500 meter spool of Invisifil that you buy from DebbyBrownQuilts.com. Do you have a stack of quilt tops just waiting to be quilted? Are you afraid to ruin them if you try to quilt them yourself? This is the class you've been waiting for. For the first time, I teach the techniques I share in my sold-out machine quilting classes to you at home. Quilting Essentials, First Steps to Free Motion Quilting, has been thoroughly tested and is finally ready for you. In more than 3 hours of video, over 10 lessons, I cover topics like stitch length, edge-to-edge quilting, tying knots, and 10 different free motion quilting patterns. You can practice these on small quilt sandwiches, panels, your own unfinished quilt tops, or on one of the 4 patterns included in the class. Enroll now and go from "I can't do this" to "look what I did now."